started. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction of the National Wildlife Federation, our Garden for Wildlife and Schoolyard Habitats program. And then I'm going to start with a couple of polls. Then we're going to move into our presentations, really the reason why we're here. So the mission of the National Wildlife Federation is to unite all people to ensure that wildlife are thriving in this rapidly changing world. Our organization believes that in order to save wildlife, we need to save ourselves. So we need to do right by the people that are that live with us, that live next to us, that live in our communities and across the nation and around the world. We want to have access to clean air, to clean water, safe communities, easy and equitable access to nature, and protection from climate change impacts. Just like we want to do this for wildlife, we want to do this for people. So the basic needs, equally necessary and urgent for all people. This is foundational to bringing conservation movement and the ethos into the 21st century. So our Garden for Wildlife program is a movement that focuses on transforming landscapes to benefit wildlife and people one garden at a time. And it launched in a great year, 1973. So for all of you early 70s or 73 specifically babies, that's a great year. That's the year I was born. So Garden for Wildlife is our nation's longest running and largest movement dedicated to helping wildlife locally and reconnecting our country's amazing wild spaces. And then along in about 1996, we introduced our Schoolyard Habitat program that helps schools across the country restore native habitat, provide access to nature, and create outdoor classrooms for learning across the curriculum. So we have thousands of schools participating, and we're watching these numbers very closely because we're getting very close to 10,000. And we're thinking that's going to hit towards the end of the summer. I was thinking, oh, not many people are going to certify their schoolyard habitat over the summer, but we actually get quite a bump in certifications over the summer. I'm thinking, okay, the school year is over, testing is done. I can breathe for a moment and get the certification process through. So we're thinking maybe by the end of the summer, we'll hit 10,000 certified schoolyard habitats. So again, welcome. I'm Jennifer Hammonds. I'll be one of the many hosts here with you tonight. I'm the director of K-12 education, and we have just a wonderful experience for you tonight, bringing community partners into the fold and how critically important they are to the success of habitat restoration, and to building relationships and to building community in and with schools. So with that, I'm going to put up a couple of polls, and Sarah, if you could launch that for me. I don't have that access at the moment. All right, so 2 polls. Do you have a schoolyard habitat? So yes, no, or it's currently in progress. And then have you worked with a partner on any environmental project, whether it's garden related or not? And Sarah, when it looks like we've reached a critical mass, you can end the poll and then you can share those results. All right, so we have about 53% do have a certified schoolyard habitat. Fantastic. Love to see that folks are in progress, and hopefully you're motivated and inspired by either this particular webinar or anything in our series this past year that gets you ready to implement a schoolyard habitat on your campus or with a partner. And then have you worked with a partner on an environmental project? 87% yes, yay. And then we've got some in progress and a couple, or maybe one no, and that's okay. Hopefully, again, this is your inspiration to reach out, or maybe you're a partner wanting to reach out to the school district or a school. So welcome again, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to first share my screen, and then we're going to start with Courtney and Ryan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Sullivan, and I'm the Director of Regional Education Programs for the Northern Rockies, Prairies, and Pacific region of the National Wildlife Federation. I'm based out in Seattle, Washington. I'm here with my amazing partner, Ryan Misley. He is an environmental educator with Pierce County Planning and Public Works. We are huge advocates for the power of partnerships. Ryan and I met during a network call that was arranged by other partners we each had been working with that were based in Pierce County. During that call, we all got to check in and hear about kind of the most recent opportunities of some state-based opportunities, and then shared what we were doing locally. During that time, I was able to bring to the group an opportunity of a grant written through a local foundation for habitat work. It was pretty flexible, so I was looking for either community volunteers or school-based partners. And from that amazing call was connected with Ryan, and we have been working on a 2-year for school grant in Pierce County, Washington. Just last Monday, we had our first installation of a schoolyard habitat at a middle school. And during our presentation, we'll highlight the 2 other schools that we've been working with. But mostly we want to share with you the power of partnership.
Thanks, Courtney. And when you said I'm amazing, I wanted to go back and say that this wouldn't be possible without you. So you're more amazing, with a lot of awesome sauce. That first slide, that last slide, that quote, "What's the best kind of work? Teamwork." I was thinking, like, what's something that stands out in all this work that we've done and over my years as an informal educator with working with schools and being a community education partner. And I remember years of doing community service, and one of my advisors, we walk down the street and he's like, "What's the best kind of work? Teamwork." And now I use that when we're working with students and volunteers on removing sod, planting things, moving 10 yards of wood chips with buckets in 2 hours. And you're like, "What's the best kind of work? Teamwork." And then the kids are yelling, and also they have more motivation, and it's more fun. And so I was just like, that's what I really encompasses the experience I've had so far working on the schoolyard habitats with Courtney. And I don't know how she does it with all the down the West Coast. But I wanted to share kind of what's kind of come out of working on the schoolyard habitats and with working with the National Wildlife Federation, and all the resources that they have available for me, for the teachers that I work with who want to connect stuff with the curriculum, with the guides. And so the next slide, as I started to kind of think about these 3 or 4 schools that we've been working with, like, who's been involved, who's helped support it, or how has it grown, this network grown throughout Pierce County, because I'm in Washington and Tacoma area, and I work with, it's a free service. My program, I have 14 members, and we've been doing this work for 30 years, since we were the first county to have curbside recycling, teaching about what's recyclable. But we now kind of really encompass a lot of environmental literacy programming and doing a series of lessons that all lead to some community action project or environmental service learning project. And so this is the schoolyard habitat, really is just kind of something we've been trying, a part of what we've been doing for years, but this is more complete package. And so this I wanted to show, of course, National Wildlife Federation and AmeriCorps, having Kelly and Courtney's team to offer the support for the teachers and students that I'm working with. And then I work for Pierce County Planning and Public Works. But something else that's spun out of this is now our Pierce County local Parks Department has a habitat steward, and they have what they say is hundreds of thousands of native plants that they need to be restored and repopulated in the parks spaces. And so we're now getting materials and working with schools now at advanced level, more like CTE in high school, to start propagating native plants, to start putting in schoolyard habitats, but also having students go on field trips to actually come and plant those plants in our parks. And I wouldn't have thought about that, and I wouldn't even have brought it up to my friend in parks had we not worked together on these projects. So that's Bethel Schools is now doing, we have 3 schools that are doing the schoolyard habitat. We have the Puyallup School District is the one now that the CTE program, the CTE director is connecting with our Pierce County Parks staff to start propagating and using their students to grow in their greenhouses, and then scheduling field trips. And they have some grant money to get to do field STEM, and so that was kind of their approach. So this ever-growing environmental education network, there's lots of ears on the ground, and as you start to hear things and connecting them and seeing that a little bit here, a little bit there, really makes these experiences for students that we find that transform them from elementary, middle school. Then in high school, they're like, we want to do something else. We don't have the club anymore. And this is what I've talked to Courtney about. The high school students that were middle school students, they didn't have anything to do at their high school. They didn't have a club. And so they notified their middle school teacher, who contacted me. And that's when Courtney and I had talked about that. And like, we want to do a schoolyard habitat. So now I have a brand. I was kind of helped them find an advisor at their school to start an environmental club. And then, so they're doing a schoolyard habitat, but these were students that have taken this like stewardship drive, the next step. Like, we don't have anything at our school to do this work, and we know it's important. And so we have some other partners, definitely our local conservation district. We've now getting plants and I'm looking at doing schoolyard and school garden leadership cohort, and actually do more training and teacher training to make sure that there's kind of a system and a network where teachers can kind of plug in and know all the steps to follow to have a schoolyard, whether it's a habitat or a schoolyard, edible gardens. Our city of Tacoma has an environmental education program, Environmental Challenger, and now they're working with us. We're doing more in the city of Tacoma and doing more teacher trainings on schoolyard habitats and gardens. We have WSU Master Gardener Program and WSU Snap Ed program. They have garden curriculums that we've been sharing now as kind of the next step. And you've done a schoolyard habitat. How do you maintain it? How do you use it to create that next step outdoor learning landscape? And how do you utilize it and continue to not just maintain it, but study it and make it a part of the curriculum? And so they have Snap Ed and WSU have grab and go garden kits that teachers can check out. So I've been sharing those. And of course, we have our local suppliers. You find Native Plant Nursery, and we've used Woodbrook now. They have a plant list, and we've had the middle school students going onto the nursery website and seeing what plants are available, and look at, these are expensive, they say when they see the price. But we've been able to do that through what we'll show next is this Padlet, this kind of a shareable document that we can add resources to. But of course, we have some of the other suppliers that now are great at coming to the school, taking a map with a drop-off zone, and they just pull up to the school and dump their 10 yards of wood chips or their compost or the soil that we need. So we have some local, this says Puyallup Bark Supply, but these are just a few. As I started to think about filling this slide, what's kind of expanded beyond just the schoolyard habitat and just the work. And so that's, wanted to make sure to give credit to that, and how this, as an informal educator, I have that flexibility to kind of put some of these together, but it's really is a team. So this next slide I wanted to share. So I think we're probably about, I'm looking at my time, 2 minutes left for 10 minutes. So during the pandemic, we couldn't really do a lot of things in classes. And so we started learning from teachers, what are some of the programs or the online tools you're using for your students. And this is a list of 100 that teachers kind of shared. And this is the one that started using. It's called Padlet, and maybe some of you are familiar with it. It just allows you to create kind of a document with resources. There's links, so you can have videos. There's different ways to set it up, but I just created column lists. And so when we started working with Wildwood Elementary and then Bethel High School and Cougar Mountain, I was able to share with the club students and the advisor or the classroom teachers first the Eco School 7-step framework. So each one of these is like, and I can actually pull up the Padlet and share my screen, but I'll just because we're short, I'll just do that. Maybe easier. So this is available to anybody. There's the link we'll post it in chat. I even created a QR code because it was easier for teachers to scan the QR code and then email it to themselves than trying to type in the web address. And so there's a lot on here, but what we were using it for was to kind of share our progress with the project. So you'll see there's a Bethel High School schoolyard habitat, there's Cougar Mountain Middle School and Wildwood Park. These are kind of, these columns show the progress of those projects. But what I was able to offer, what helped the teachers was to prep for these, and the resources that are amazing that the Eco Schools USA and what National Wildlife Federation have available to really guide and students doing their own assessment of their school grounds. So there's they can choose a pathway for sustainability. There's a environmental review, so they go out and then it guides them in teams to go and review, look and analyze their school grounds for soil, for wildlife habitat, for like the historical. So there's little questions, kind of like a survey, and that helps them guide. And then into like plant selection, what they want to do. And there's a dream session where they dream their schoolyard wildlife habitat. But it was great because I could just share it with the teacher and meet with the students. Even if we didn't meet, they were able to follow those steps and really come up with a plan. And then that's where Courtney kind of took their plan, and looks like we're out of time, and put together Schoolyard, the habitat site plan. But all of these are, there's pictures of it, but each of the projects now have a metal sign that actually has a QR code where you can learn more, but it has the name of the native plants and information about each plant, not to mention the schoolyard, the actual schoolyard habitat sign. But each school had a different location, and there's always some sort of a plan, and the students help do that. And then of course, on the ground, just the things that we found, having the supplies and tools provided for different partners and even parents and teachers, and the administration and the custodial support is always really important to get them on board at the schools. But to see kids finding salamanders out in there they've never seen before, here students in there, this is the elementary, but these are 6th graders planting, there's sword ferns there to extend their schoolyard wildlife habitat. But this same school, they also have an edible garden, and so they moved 20 yards of wood chips in 2 days. 42 5-gallon buckets. This is important information. 42 5-gallon buckets is 1 cubic yard. So they moved 840 buckets. But before I knew it, the wood chips were gone, and but what they were doing was getting rid of the grass. We sheet mulch, so we learned some new techniques, and that's some of the successes and failures. Like, don't let the grass grow back. How do you prevent that over time? But we had the custodial staff and setting up sprinklers and making sure that there's a watering schedule. Just kind of sharing that. But this Padlet, I also had another one that really quick that I also shared. It's another Padlet, and it's in the PowerPoint presentation. But this was one that I've shared with teachers, the Schoolyard Outdoor Learning Landscapes, and it's just more resources for them to use the outdoor space as they build it, to think about, the square foot gardening, school garden showcase. There's pollinator habitat guide. It's a lot of resources, but I've actually had teachers share with me that they shared this with their students and had them each find one thing and share out what they learned from the Padlet. And like, that's the best way to do it, but it's can be overwhelming, but it's really is a collection of resources that I just couldn't stand seeing them on my digital folder on my desktop or hidden in a county server. I wanted them to be viewable, and this Padlet makes it kind of the easiest thing I could find to share. But I think I'll stop sharing that. That's a lot of it, but I wanted you to see. I know I want to get to all the pictures of all the kids and students working and all the volunteers working. But I'd say that in 30 years of Pierce County having environmental education and a program that's free, this is the best year. One of the best. And I thank all of you at the National Wildlife Federation for making that available. And I know, you always want to share the stories. And yesterday, just one thing, or Monday, one thing, we're in South Puget Sound area, and I asked the students, there's a wheelbarrow, and one of them asked, can we use the wheelbarrow? And I asked one of the students, or asked to the group, how many of you have ever spilt the wheelbarrow? And 90% of them raised their hand that they'd all used the wheelbarrow and spilt it. So we did a lesson. And it's just those little stories, hard to share all those in this amount of time.
Yes.
But those things the kids are saying while they're out there and the things they remember, but to have a teacher that says this was great and it wasn't that difficult, and they see how they can, where they fit in to maintain it and to continue to use the habitat areas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing all of those great resources. And again, Courtney put those links in the chat, and this again is being recorded, so you can also go back and catch the QR codes and anything that you might have missed. So we're going to move to our next presenters, and that's going to be Amanda and Susan.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Knight, and I am a landscape designer with the National Wildlife Federation's Early Childhood Health Outdoors program based in Denver, Colorado. And I am incredibly excited to introduce our next speaker, Susan Bennett, who is with the City of Wheat Ridge Parks and Rec Department as an environmental interpreter. We've had the pleasure of partnering with Susan and her team over the past 3 years through our ECHO grant to envision and plan for a nature play area in their local public park. Susan will be sharing how they've brought this space to life through the help of their local elementary school and other partners. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Susan.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to be here. And wow, I'm already excited about Ryan's program. I think there's some similarities here, but our program started out actually with the ECHO. So I'm learning about schoolyard habitats, but we started out with the Early Childhood Outdoors program when we got a seed grant. So that was kind of our first partnership. If we could go to the next slide, please. One of the things that was really important to us is, having the kids' voices be included while we were designing this new park place. The school or the park was under renovation. So that was something where we were able to start listening to kids. And the way this happened, if you could go to the next slide, please, is I have a relationship with Wilmore Davis, and like Ryan was talking about too, with lots of schools in the community. Wilmore Davis happens to be one of 5 elementary schools in the community. It's a pretty diverse student body, and before COVID, they had a combination class system. So it was K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. They use what's called the project-based learning paradigm, which if you have questions, we can go through more of that later. But it's also located within walking distance to Anderson Park, which is where the nature play area was going to be created. And that gave the teachers a lot more flexibility to have students be able to come without having to have buses and all that additional planning and paperwork that happens with getting the field trips out. They could just walk there. They consider Anderson Park their park, so they already had some ownership with that park. And it also gave us an opportunity to continue to build our relationship. Next slide, please. So Amanda and the crew at National Wildlife Federation helped us put this together. And what happened is we started with the design of our nature play area, and we went to Wilmore Davis and said, hey, with your project-based learning paradigm, how would you feel about using some of these pods in the nature play area as the authentic project that you're going to teach around? And when I presented that to the administration and teachers, I thought that the 4th and 5th graders would be the teachers who embraced this concept. And actually what happened was we had the whole school embrace the concept. So if you take a look at this slide, you can see various pods. The bird habitat, which is in the northeast corner, was the project that the kindergarten and 1st graders took. The middle part is the history pod, and that was the part that the 2nd and 3rd graders took. And then the labyrinth, which looks like a star, was the part that the 4th and 5th graders designed. So the thing that was just amazing about how they all participated was the ideas that they came up with that we maybe weren't thinking about. Like, we have a railroad in the history area, which if I'm thinking about Colorado history, that might not have been something that we would have included, but it was something very important to the kiddos. So we did that. In the bird habitat, there's logs, because the kiddos learned that birds not only eat seeds, but they also eat bugs that live in logs. So that's why we have logs. And the star was amazing because the kiddos had a choice of having a maze or a labyrinth, and they chose a labyrinth because they wanted that contemplative, meditative aspect. They didn't want the stress of a maze. They chose the star because it reflects the sky, and they wanted everyone to think about how we are all stars in our own way. Next slide, please. So this project really started to blossom and offer all sorts of learning opportunities. Like I mentioned, it met some of the needs of the project-based learning. You can just imagine as the kids are learning about their project and researching it, how science, technology, engineering, art, and math could be implemented. We did some basic project management skills as part of it. We started out with a kickoff meeting. It met numerous standards for Colorado, and that helped the teachers as they were moving forward. And the thing that I like best about all of these types of projects is that there's one kind of kid that I'm sure you guys have met who is really good at memorizing and knows all the facts. And then there's that other kind of kid who really excels when they're out doing. And this project just gave so many opportunities for students to do that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So like I said, we followed the project management approach. We started out with a kickoff meeting. These are some examples of staff and students with the ask. I mean, just like in a project management situation, you're going to have your client come to you and ask, give you the parameters of their design and what they need. And that's what we did with these kickoff meetings in a way that was grade appropriate for the students. Next slide, please. So you can see here, next part of project management would be your research and design. And one of the things that is really important for the teachers, and especially in a project-based learning paradigm, is having experts come out. It's not the teacher who has to be the expert in all these things. So this was another opportunity for community and other partners to be involved. In this particular case, we have a person who used to work at National Wildlife Federation talking about how labyrinths could be designed. But we also had various experts in birds come out and talk to the kiddos about birds. So it was really good for that opportunity for the students to learn from other people. Next slide, please. And STEAM or STEM, I guess back up one, if you could back up one. Oh, no, that's right, we're where we are. So the next part was the students actually had their presentations that they gave first to other students, then to parents, then to teachers. And they used that as a way to sort who was going to give presentations to National Wildlife Federation and city staff. And one of the things I wanted to point out is, you know, in these slides, we have kiddos who are kindergarten all the way to 5th grade who have this opportunity to present. And they were presenting to our Parks and Rec director. So they have the support all the way up to the top for this project. If you could go to the next slide, please. Examples of art and design. This is one of the things that is just amazing, is seeing the kiddos were given their opportunity to design their labyrinth. They learned from Derek about how to do it, and then they picked what their shape was gonna be. They picked what art materials they were gonna use to create that model. And it's where the situation where it's all beautiful, and it meets both the art and the design and the engineering aspects of the education. If you could go to the next slide, please. Then we've got even more examples of how we're meeting technology, engineering, and math. Kiddos were out there measuring. They were using baby CAD to create their design, and you know, the problem solving, because the tape measure was only 20 feet long, 25 feet long, and my site is bigger than that. How do I address that? Next slide, please, because everybody's excited about their projects. And this is another aspect where we grew to more of the community. CLE is College Living Experience. It's a group of students who are between high school and college and need more support. And this is part of their career exploration activity. They came out and they volunteered when COVID hit. The kiddos from Wilmore Davis were supposed to install each of their pods, but because of COVID, they were unable to. CLE, I have a relationship with them. They came out and they started building stuff for us. So we had that aspect of it. We have our staff who was involved with it. And you can see the habitat that they're creating. There was also a pollinator garden. And if you could go to the next slide, please. You can see it here as well. In this slide, we've got the pollinator garden. We've got the log area. The kiosk was put in by a Boy Scout for his Eagle project. This is, lost where we're going. Anyways, it gets so exciting because the other thing kids were finding that the CLE kids, when they came back and were helping maintenance with the weeding, is we were finding snakes, we were finding toads, and what we were supposed to be finding, we were finding as well, because we had all varieties of bees and butterflies and hummingbirds that were coming to this location. So if you could go to the next slide, please. This is a little bit more current where we are. We have the boat, which there in other ones, there was a log and it's now been carved into a boat. More CLE kids are out here helping me put some board preservative on it. We're working on the railroad and we're working on the labyrinth. The stars just getting put in. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I just want to thank both Gates Foundation, National Wildlife Federation, and the Colorado Health Foundation for their support on this. I wish I had thought like Ryan to do a slide of all the different partners, because it would be similarly exciting of how many different people and groups have been involved. So anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing this wonderful experience for both the schools and for the CLE kids and the other partners that you've worked with to move this along in its various phases. It's exciting. All right, we're going to move into our third presentation. And Milena, I'm going to hand it to you.
All right, well, good night, everyone. My name is Marilena Garcia. I'm the Florida Education Manager for the National Wildlife Federation, and I manage the Eco School USA and Schoolyard Habitat programs, mainly in Miami-Dade County. Sometimes I go to Broward County in the north, but most of my time is here with Miami-Dade County, which is the fourth largest school district in the nation. And I'm going to be presenting our partner, which is Jennifer Posley. She is the Conservation Program Manager for the Fairchild Tropical Botanical Gardens. And she manages, or she's the leader of the Connect to Protect Network program, which she's going to be talking about in more detail about it. But before she starts talking, I want to share how we connected, how NWF and the Connect to Protect Network connected in the first place. NWF is new to this area, to South Florida. I was hired to start growing the schoolyard habitat and the Eco School USA program in this area. And so when I first started in 2018 with one of the first schools that I started working, one of the teachers chose the biodiversity pathway through the Eco School USA program, and she wanted to install a pine rockland garden. And I had no idea what that was because I'm new to the region and I didn't know a lot about native plants from South Florida. So the teacher actually, who's one of my rockstar teachers, she was the one who connected me to Connect to Protect. She was the one who told me about this program that they provided a starter kit for schools and homeowners to install it for free. So, but she never had the time to go to the nursery to make the connection with Connect to Protect, to do all that coordination. So I offered to do that connection, coordinate the plant pickup for this first garden that I was going to build that I had no clue what it was. And that's when I met Connect to Protect. And they were absolutely fabulous and super friendly and wanted to grow their programming also in schools. So they gave us the plans for this first garden that you see here in this slide. This was our first garden in 2018, in the school year 2018-19. And Daniela Champney, she's the manager of the Connect to Protect Network program. She can't be here with us today. She came to the school. She helped me identify the plants, teaching me how to do this kind of gardening, which is very specialized. So before I go on, I want to introduce Jennifer so she can tell you a little bit more about what is a pine rockland garden, why is it so special, and where we're going from here.
Okay, thanks, Maria Elena. And yeah, we're really, and Miami is unique in many ways, and I think our partnership is probably unique for NWF. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about what we do and how we work together, and then I'll pass it back to Maria Elena to show some of the other work that's been done at schools. And I have to qualify that Daniela is the one that's really done all of this work with Maria Elena. She's on vacation right now, and I'm her boss standing in for her. So, but the Connect to Protect network is something we started at Fairchild in 2007. And this is Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden in Miami. The reason why we started this program is we, in Miami, we have just kind of the worst situations as far as conservation and native plants goes. We've lost over 98% of our native plant community cover. Very few of the people who live here have any kind of a history here or real ties to the environment. So I've been at the garden for 20 years trying to conserve rare plants, and it's become more and more obvious through time that we really need to reach out to the community, or we're just kind of doing this for ourselves. So the Connect to Protect network is aimed at engaging homeowners to plant native plants in their yard and schools to plant native plants in their schoolyards, but we do not have the staff at all to do the required follow-up and site visits that schools really need. Homeowners can be pretty independent, but with the teacher workload and the, accidents happening over the summer break and things like this, schools need quite a bit more attention. So I know that the partnership that Maria Elena and Daniela formed was perfect. We just happened to come from two organizations that each kind of, she lacked some expertise in some plants, which we had, and we lacked the time to go into schools and the connections to schools. So it's been a beautiful partnership. And they've had some six beautiful gardens. And I have to say the ones that we're involved with other school gardens, but the ones that Maria Elena is involved with are have much higher success rates. I'll say that. I'll pass it back to you to tell some of the details, Maria Elena.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes. So let's go to the next slide, please. So here we have Daniela, the famous Daniela who's on vacation. She gracefully comes to our schools and she helps us design the gardens and where to place each plant, because these are very specialized plants. And she helps us identifying the plants. So when we leave, those plants are identified, and I try to leave, in each school, I leave them with a little booklet of the names of the plants and what are their characteristics, specific characteristics, so the teachers can go out there and keep working with the students after we leave. Next slide, please. One thing I want to mention is, coincidentally, because of COVID, the year 2002, school year 2020-2021 was when we did the most amount of gardens, because we were back in schools very soon. And this was a great way to take the teachers and the students outside. We were focusing a lot on outdoor learning and outdoor classrooms. So this, we thought, instead of having less participation from schools, we had the most participation schools in this type of garden installation, which was a great turnout. This was the Gloria Floyd Elementary garden. Next slide, please. Here we have Palm Springs Elementary and Tropical Elementary, all done in 2020, 2021. And this is all done by the students. You know, they do all the work. I pick up the plants, we install them, and then I go back to the school, see how they're doing, see what is the rate of survival of these plants. If I need more plants because some of them perish, Daniela, Connect to Protect gives me a little bit more plants, all free. So this has been great because we have been doing these gardens basically with no budget. Whatever the parents can donate to us and all the plants that are donated by Connect to Protect. Next slide, please. This is some of the things that we do. This was amazing. We have a beautiful butterfly in South Florida called the Atala butterfly. And some of the science that the students do, was in Royal Palm Elementary, our first garden that we installed. I picked up caterpillars from the Montgomery Botanical Gardens, which was another connection that was done through Connect to Protect. I picked up the caterpillars and the students released them in their Pine Rockland garden. And they collected the data, survival rate. Sorry, that was my timer. That was time to stop. But the Atalas didn't come. They were all released and born, and we had a lot of cocoons. It was great, but they didn't come back. And it was because we didn't have enough specialized nectar plants for the butterflies. So the school decided to do an extension of this garden. That garden is developing with nectar plants, and we're going to try to release the Atala butterfly next school year and see if we have better success with this particular project. And I'm going to leave it at that because I know I'm out of time. Oh, I have one more. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah. So another example of the activities that we do there, botanical, the kids are doing a lot of botanical drawings of these rare plants. A lot of these plants are critically endangered. So it's an honor to have these plants at schools. And one of the favorite activities to do is do botanical drawing. And in the other picture to the left, the kids are doing a habitat hunt to see if wildlife has what it takes to survive in this area. And I'm going to finish with the news that I just got from this particular school, that they have a family of gray foxes living at the school. So I don't know if it's because of the Pine Rockland Garden, but I'm going to attribute it to it. So that's a great success story.
Thank you so much, Milena, for sharing that, and Jennifer for sharing. What a great partnership and relationship that is. And I know it's continuing to blossom. So that leads us, and I want to thank all of our panelists, Susan and Ryan, Amanda and Courtney. Thank you so much for sharing. We have next on our agenda are our panel questions. And so I'm going to start, actually, before we start with those panelist questions, I think there are some things that came through the Q&A. Sarah, do you want to share one of those questions?
Sure thing. It looks like we might have answered one, but we can ask that for the whole group.
Okay.
They asked if he had a list of items for the student grab and go garden kits. And Ryan, do you want to just share that for everyone too?
Yeah, so I did put the link, I think it was already in chat, but it's to kind of my second Padlet that I've put together to have resources. And in that Padlet, it's the Living Schoolyards Padlet. And it has a column where there's a WSU Master Gardeners grab and go garden kits and curriculum. So I checked out the kits and took pictures of them and scanned all their curriculum and made it a PDF. And so if you're not in Pierce County and you want to, call your local Master Gardener and see if they can talk to our local Master Gardeners and have them build these grab and go kits for you. But it was a special project for 2 Master Gardeners, and that were actually, I think one was a retired teacher. So I scanned them and there's pictures of what's in each kit, but they're a series of lessons and there's links. I don't think they're live links, but they each wherever there's a link in that material, they're the full web address, not a shortened one. So you could, so there's lots of extra resources. They have books and videos to watch that go along with the kits. So hopefully that will help. You can at least see all the lessons are in there, the materials, pictures of the materials, almost enough that if you zoom in, you probably could build. I might be missing one of the 5 pictures of one of the 5 because they had it checked out, but I laid it all out one day. I went over there and laid them all out because I want to share these kits and make sure teachers are using them.
Excellent, thank you. And then the other one, this could be for all of the panelists or even or the NWF staff that are on the call too, is Heather asks, we are in the planning stage of our butterfly garden habitat. Do you have any resources for a school that would like to make their garden as wheelchair walker accessible as possible?
Yeah, anybody have any advice about meeting ADA wheelchair accessibility?
I would say something because I'm work for Pierce County Planning and Public Works, and I've recognized now in actually some presentations that I've been to, and really the goal of Pierce County, they're not just streets and sidewalks and crossing sections there and schools. They're available, at least our county is available because of their the mandates they have to help where this is needed. And so they've been open. I've had an engineer talk and share some stories about things that they've done that I didn't think was the county, was what the county would be doing, but it's on public land. So it's a school. So that's maybe a place to start, because I know that our county and the state, I recognize even cities, there's funding for that, and they're redoing all of the crossing sections, in my community everywhere. They're rebuilding all the intersections and all the parks as well. So if you're on a school public property, you might check, and it wouldn't hurt to ask.
I would add to that you may also have a resource in the city. We have a person who does the same kind of jobs in the city. And so that's who we've gone to for ADA access and ATA compliance. And something I've recognized, even for my own work, but also from the partners and others, kind of cohorts and those people in kind of similar roles to me, but also in our sewer department and other city departments and county departments. If you're a public educator and you ask, they tend to go out of their way to find a yes or find some whether and it's just sometimes asking, because you don't realize that we are public servants. And so we do, in my work, we talk about Pierce County residents as our customers, and it's kind of weird to say that, but that's really, in a lot of ways, that's who we're serving. And so a lot of times that can be, for my program, it's overwhelming because you get a lot of requests. Like, can you do this? Can you do this? Oh, I've heard you've done this. Can you do that? Can you help us plan a science night? And those kind of things. But sometimes it's just asking and finding the right people that will know that that's something they could, that's sometimes they find that those projects are more rewarding to work on.
Yeah. And I would also suggest talking with someone in your facilities department that works on designing pathways that according to ADA accessibility. We might also have something, we have demonstration gardens in Austin, Texas, And that demonstration garden is ADA accessible. And so I can look to, and in a follow-up email out to the group, I can share anything I find from that outreach.
In the first Schoolyard habitat Ryan and I worked on together at the elementary school, so there's photos in the Padlet. We built a path, a wood chip path, but we leveled it. We took out all the grass and leveled it so that it could be wheelchair accessible, and added a raised garden bed. So a garden bed that was on legs so wheelchairs could roll right under. And so there's photos of that on the Padlet.
And the plants in there, Courtney, are growing great. Courtney, we always want to give her updates.
I saw them when I dropped off the ferns on Saturday.
All right, anything else in the Q&A, Sarah, before I move to some other questions?
That was it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this question again is for any of the panelists who want to, I also want to be cognizant of our time. We have about 7 more minutes left. So to date, what is maybe your greatest success, your biggest challenge, or a lesson learned that you'd like to share with the group? And we can start with, let's start with South Florida.
You want to start, Jennifer, with the challenges?
Let's see. I guess I know we have a million challenges, but my mind is blank, and I'll just touch on something that we've kind of talked about that's really important for school gardens here, is to have a really clearly defined border. That's something that Maria Elena does really well, and we've seen before we hooked up with her. We've come across many schools that their garden just completely disappeared over the summer. Having a giant black border is really important for the schoolyards, especially when there's not necessarily support from the summer maintenance staff. So I guess that's a challenge that's been overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we it's very true, and I have made very clear with the teachers that we need a border, that we would be providing the plants, but we had to be very creative in our borders. And I like to get limestone rocks donated, which is what the Pine Rockland needs. It's limestone. So that has been a success, and a learning point has been getting the administration on board. Once they see, even if all these gardens that you saw in our pictures, they were not more than 10 by 15. And I tell all the teachers, let's start very small, even if it's a 10 by 10. And once we install it, maybe the principal is not paying too much attention, but once it's installed and they see it, and I start talking to them about the importance of these plants, that they have a critically endangered habitat now in their schoolyard, their eyes open, and the buy-in is much greater, and they're taking on. Now they take time and they ask money from the PTA to get more mulch or to get a hose, or now that the buy-in, it's once they understand the importance of these very specialized gardens, that's what has been one of the greatest lessons. To start very small, little by little, and once you get the administration's attention, they're hooked. They're hooked. We don't lose them.
Yeah, one of the things that was powerful for the high school students is they went to the school board and shared what they were working on in their own words. And I think it was actually their teacher, their advisor, shared it with the principal. Principal like, we gotta highlight, we gotta promote our school. And all of a sudden they were put on the agenda for the school board. But I've found that any any elected officials, invite them to the projects, because then more money comes in. They can't say no. So really be advocates for the work you're doing, and by doing, so sharing it as best you can and getting the students to be the face of the project, because then it can grow, and then you also get more support from administration. And the students love it. I mean, they're not sure about it, but then when they're done, they get so much praise and thank you. And then they're like, oh, that was great. But they're all nervous getting ready for it.
Susan, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest successes we had was that going to the school with, hey, here's an idea that might work with your project-based learning paradigm, and having the whole school embrace it. That I think met one of the challenges that we do have, which is getting the administration on board. And here we had the whole school on board. So that was very exciting for me. I think that one of the other challenges that we have, and anybody who's in informal education has, is getting those connections into the school. Because you can email or you can talk, but until you can actually meet and work with the teachers and show them what you're bringing and how you're helping them, not just giving them another project that they have to do, I think that is a challenge to reach out and show them how we can be a collaborative team instead of just, oh, here, why don't you do this kind of a thing.
Thank you so much, Susan. So we have another important question about funding, but we're running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that question to our panelists to answer. And in the follow-up email, I'm going to send out to everybody the responses to that question, and along with the recording and any of the assets our presenters want to send out. But any last words of wisdom to share with the group from any of the panelists?
I guess one thing I'd say is that, having, and Courtney did a great job, and Kelly, of having a plan. We came up with a plan, and having the materials there and kind of the tools, and then just explaining to the students, these are middle school students. Actually I did it with elementary. Just point out the materials and saying, this is what we're doing. This is the goals. And then they go to work and they figure out how to do it faster than you think. Like, how do we get in 2 hours, 100 plants in the ground, and all the mold or all the sod pulled up, carried to the bush, dumped into the woods outside the school, which we had approval for that, bringing in over all the compost in the soil, and tucking all the plants in and cleaning the sidewalk a little bit, and finishing. What we had to do is take the sod away from the sidewalk. So we cut the sod away there, just removed it. We cut it into chunks and the kids like, we get to use a pickaxe. Trust them with that. You do a little safety, but they're actually, they take care of it in many ways. The teacher's like, oh, no, don't let them watch. Oh, yeah. They're doing great. They're doing great, giving them that chance. But having lots of buckets, because I found that if it's wood chips, mulch, they can just scoop it. If it's compost, you just scoop a bucket instead of using a shovel, which is, we've done a test. 20 scoops to fill it with the shovel takes like 30 seconds. You can push through and then use your glove hands to fill the bucket in 5-10 seconds or something like that. Like, that's way faster. So you just show them some of the little little what they call hacks. But we're ready for our project to now this is something we've learned, because one of our this is, if you're not really ready for this, you'll get this picture, a schoolyard habitat and edible garden that becomes overgrown. I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm. We prevented that now with using weed barrier, and Courtney found some corn-based one, and then wood chips over the top. Basically, creating that border, like you said, is having a border that separates their mowed areas from the schoolyard habitat. And so we're guaranteed like at least 6 years of no grass coming in, but now they can see it and we can maintain it. But this was them not having the whole school involved as well. You get a garden that looks like this because these are growing in 1 gallon pots. They weren't even put in the garden beds.
Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing that. And we are just a little bit over time, but as you're leaving tonight, if you will leave a note in the chat about how you're feeling as you're leaving the space, hopefully that's inspired or motivated or mindful or reflective or whatever it might be. I want to thank our panelists too. We just appreciate everyone for being here. Have a good night.